Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to solve another lab from Pwned Labs, and the name of this lab is Escalate Privileges by IAM Policy Rollback. Just a quick heads up, this lab is under the premium subscription. Okay, so let's see the entry points. We have got the access key ID and the secret access key ID, and here we have to submit our flag. So before we get into the scenario, let's first understand what is the meaning of rollback. A rollback typically involves restoring a previous version of the IAM policy configuration. And we all know that IAM policies dictate who has access to which AWS resources and what actions they can perform on those resources, right? So if we forget to delete that overly permissive policy version 1, it can indeed pose a security risk, right? Because it might still be active and it allow unauthorized access to resources. So we will see that stuff in this lab, like how this policy version 1 can pose a security threat. Okay, so let's see our scenario. Our scenario is during a routine review for huge logistics, your team stumble upon a file named password, and using the AWS credentials found in that file, can you navigate and possibly access sensitive data and resources within huge logistics cloud environment? And remember, it's not just about finding vulnerabilities, it is about understanding the potential consequences and protecting the client. So it's time to dig deeper. Obviously, our goal is same, and this lab teaches you how the slightly over-permissive IAM policy can lead to a privilege escalation. And as usual, the lab prerequisites are same, like the basic Linux command line knowledge is required. Learning outcomes will be IAM policy enumeration. We will see how we can do that. Then identification and exploitation of dangerous IAM permissions. Then we'll see how we can enumerate S3 bucket. And one of my favorite part, like we'll see how we can crack the password of the zip file. Okay. Difficulty of the lab is beginners and focus is on our red team. Cool. And here we have our real world context, and you can read more about this permission or this setting here on the AWS side. We'll put the link in the description box so you guys can easily read this document. Okay. Now let's start off with our enumeration. We have got the access key ID and secret access key ID, right? So let me just open the terminal. Okay, so I've already installed the AWS CLI. So let me write AWS hyphen version, and I'm using this version. And let's configure the credential with the help of AWS configure command. So let's copy the access key ID and copy it, paste it here, hit enter. Now let's copy the secret access key ID, paste it here. Default region, I'm not going to provide any default region here. Default output, let's go with none, and let's hit enter. And let's write AWS STS get caller identity to check who we are. This command is same as who am I command in Linux. Okay, so let's check who we are. Okay, so we are this intern1 user. Now it's time to start our IAM enumeration. So first, let's check if we have any policy attached to this intern user. Okay, and for that we'll use the following command, that is AWS IAM list attached policies, and the username will be this intern01. Okay, let me hit enter. And as you guys can see, we have this policy name, that is intern policy, and here we can see the policy ARN. Okay, so let me open my notepad and let's copy the policy ARN, copy it, paste it here. Now let's get the policy version, and for that we have to use this command, that is AWS IAM list policy versions, and we have to provide the policy ARN. And let me just copy our policy ARN and let me paste it here. Now let's hit enter. As you guys can see, we have this version 1 and version 2 of this IAM policy. So let's check the version 2 of this policy. It is a newest version, so let's check that. And we'll use the command that is AWS IAM get policy version and the policy ARN. Let's provide the policy ARN hyphen version ID. Okay, and we are interested in the version ID too. So let me clear the screen. This is gonna be our command. IAM get policy version, policy ARN, and then we have to provide the version ID. Let me hit enter. Let's hit enter, and you have to press Q to end this. Now let's check the permission of this policy. This is a document version. Intern policy effect is allow, and these are the permissions, or we can say actions. This user can describe instances, get policy version, get policy, list policy versions, get user policy, list attached user policies, set default policy version. And this set default policy version, this is a dangerous permission, as we have read here, potentially dangerous permission that AWS caution about using. Basically, this permission allows IAM users to set the default version of an IAM policy, and this can be useful for managing access control within your AWS environment. But if you're not using it carefully, it could lead to unintended changes in access control, and it will potentially expose the sensitive resources or data. So with the help of this permission, we can change the default policy version. Okay, now it is set to version 2. We can set it to version 1. Okay, and instead of version 2, let's write version 1 to check the permission of this policy. Okay, let's hit enter. Okay, and as you guys can see, in version 1 we can describe instances, we can list all the buckets, get object, and list the bucket, and the effect is allow, and the resources are all. So this policy grant full access. As you guys can see, it's a overly permissive written policy, and it's time to set our version 1 as our default policy. Okay, so we'll use the following command. So we have to write AWS IAM set default policy version. We have to provide the policy ARN, right? Let me copy the policy ARN. Version ID will be V1. Okay, we are setting the default policy version 1. Okay, let's hit enter. Now we should access the S3 service. So let me write AWS S3 LS, and we have got this huge logistic data bucket. Okay, now let's write AWS S3 LS, and I'm gonna copy the bucket name, hit enter, and as you guys can see, we have this export.zip file. And let's go to our lab 8. Let me run the command. Okay, let's write AWS S3 CP to copy this. S3, copy the bucket name, mx export.zip, and I want it in my current directory. Let's hit enter. Now we have the zip file. Let's unzip this, and we have to provide the password. So let's write 1234, a basic password. Okay, admin. No. So we have to crack the password of this zip file, and for that we will use ziptojohn. Okay, it's a tool. It is not a tool, by the way. It is a part of the John the Ripper password cracking software, and ziptojohn is specifically designed to extract password or password hashes from encrypted zip files and converted them into the format that John the Ripper can understand. So for that, let me just write, I'm sorry, let me clear the screen and let's write John hyphen H. Okay, so I already have John the Ripper installed because I'm using Kali Linux, obviously. Let me write which John, and here we have this location. Let me go to usrs bin. Let's write ls, and you will see this zip2john. Okay, now let's use this. Okay, zip2john, and we are extracting the hashes from the encrypted zip file, right? And for that, let's go to home, Afshan own labs, lab 8, and the file name, that is mx export.zip. Okay, so we are extracting the hashes from this encrypted file, and I'm redirecting the output to the mx export.zip.hash. Okay, this is gonna be our hash file, that is mx export.zip.hash file that we will be utilizing to crack our password in John the Ripper. Okay, so let me clear the screen, and this is gonna be our command. Let me hit enter. Let me copy this. I have already run this command, that is the reason it is happening. ls grep export, and you will see this, we have this hash file. Okay, now we have this hash file. You have to write, let me clear the screen, mx export zip.hash, and we have to provide the rocku.txt file. Okay, like this is a word list that we are providing. Let me hit enter and loaded one password hash because I have already cracked the hash. So let me write John mx, and let's me write show, so we'll see the password. And here you can see the password, that is one logistic is our zip file password. Let me copy it. Let's go to our directory lab 8 and let's unzip this file. Unzip, and let me paste the password here, hit enter. Now let's ls, and you can see we have got our flag.txt file and mx export.json. So let's cat the JSON file dot JSON, hit enter, and as you guys can see, we have this credit card information, name, email addresses, okay, country names. Great. Let's write, let's cat our flag, and let me just copy the flag. Let's go back and let me paste the flag here, and let's submit it. Okay, congrats, you have successfully completed the challenge. Cool. And make sure that you guys terminate the lab. Let's examine the policies that being utilized by the huge logistics because of this breach happened, right? Because of the IAM policy permissions, this breach happened. So let's examine or evaluate the huge logistics permission policies. Okay, so here we have our policy version 1 and version 2, and both the policies are not following the principle of least privilege, which is a fundamental security concept in which users are granted only the minimum level of access or permissions needed to perform their task. We all know the definition of least privilege principle. In the first policy, that is a version number 2, which grants the broad permissions to perform various IAM and EC2 actions without specifying any conditions or constraint. As you guys can see, this user has a lot of access, that is set default policy version, list attached users policy, get policy, describe instances. These are the broad permissions, and this unrestricted, okay, this unrestricted access increases the risk of misuse or unauthorized access to resources, and it will potentially lead to the security breach. Similarly, the second policy also grant broad permissions, and it will allow actions related to EC2 service and S3 on all resources. As you guys can see, all resources without any condition or constraint. And these permissions can expose sensitive data or resources to unintended users, and it will increase the likelihood of security incident. So both the permissions should be reviewed and refined to limit the permissions to only the essential actions required by the users to fulfill their roles or tasks. This is how you can delete the specific version of an IAM policy. You just have to write IAM AWS IAM delete policy version, and we have to provide two parameters here. The first one is policy ARN, that is policy Amazon resource name, and the version ID, which version ID you want to delete, v1 or v2. Okay, and this is the command for deleting the specific version of an IAM policy. Let's see some security measures that we have to follow when we are creating security policies. Okay, so first is follow the principle of least privilege. Obviously, it's a cornerstone of effective security management within any organization structure, like infrastructure. And by following this principle, you ensure that users, application, and systems are granted uh, only the minimum level of access or permissions required to perform their specific task. Number 2 is related to audit. We have to regularly audit our IAM policies, because IAM policies play a vital role in maintaining a secure environment. IAM conditions, just think of IAM conditions as we are adding additional layers of security and controls to our permissions. And conditions basically allow you to define specific circumstances under which permissions are granted, such as time of day, source IP addresses, or the presence of multi-factor authentication, that is MFA. And by using conditions effectively, organizations can tailor permissions to their specific scenario or their specific need. Next up, we have risk reduction. Risk reduction basically means we are removing or restricting the unnecessary permissions and policies, and it will definitely minimize the likelihood of security incident. Then we have clutter reduction. Clutter reduction means, like, in this process, we are just simplifying and organizing our IAM policies and permissions, making them easier to manage and understand. So these are the security measures that we have to follow. We have to always audit our permissions, like IAM policies and permissions, to make sure that our AWS environment is safe and secure. So this is what I have planned for this video, guys. I hope you like it. If you did, then please share this video with your friends and your colleagues, and make sure that you guys are subscribing to my YouTube channel. We'll see you in my next video. Till then, take care and keep learning. Bye bye.